worry about my slides. My slides are, in the words of the Bee Gees, words, just words. Okay, so they are not really that important to what I was going to say. Okay, my name is Atul Chitnis. As Rini has said, I do a lot of things. Some of you know me for things that I've done in the past, but I want to speak specifically about something that's been in my bonnet for a while, and I want to make, let's see whether I can make a change over here. So what I would like to talk about is online communities beyond the concept of what you know as social networking or social media. So let's get started on this with a little bit of history and tell you where I'm coming from. 1987, I was working on a PC, and I've laid my hands on a modem. And well, obviously this is India, and there wasn't any way I could dial into. The first internet connection in India, ERNet, would come only a year later. So the only way I could actually try out this modem was to dial into a system in the US, which is what I proceeded to do. Believe me, that was a very expensive thing to do in those days, and I don't even want to think about those telephone bills, which I accrued in the next coming year. I would dial into system after system after system. Basically, I didn't know what I was looking for. Okay, I was hunting around trying to see what is it that this magical thing called the online world could give me. And it turned out what I was really looking for was people. Now, I dialed into, the systems I was dialing into were known as bulletin board systems, they're called the BBS. And what I was looking for was people. I wanted to be able to reach out and converse with people, get familiar with them, find out what they do. I wanted to meet people who are not in my immediate vicinity. Now that was pretty hard in those days. Now remember, even a normal phone call in the 1980s in India was a quite Herculean task. Never mind attaching a modem to a telephone line and dialing anywhere, forget next door, dialing abroad. But yes, I managed, and I got bitten, I got hooked. And eventually decided to set up a system of my own, because I saw how useful this was to people abroad. And there was nothing like that here in India, so I decided to set up something of that on my own. And 1st December 1989, this is 2 years later, I set up my own BBS, which was running on a single PC, on a single telephone line, on a single modem out of my bedroom in Bangalore. And I wondered where this would go. So where it went is actually here. Now this was the reaction I got the first time anyone ever dialed into my BBS. The person dialed in, I had no clue who it was. I had yet to perfect, the software is written by me, so I didn't quite know what needed to be done. There was no question of an authentication system or identifying yourself. You just dialed in, you were in, period, that was it. And then you had a list of options in front of you, and one of the options was chat with someone. Okay, chat with, whoever is manning the BBS. And within seconds, that person who had dialed in hit that button, and my console started buzzing, so I went and went online to chat with him. And the first thing that he typed was this: hello. This person wasn't looking at hacking into anybody's computer. This person wasn't looking at downloading the latest game or doing anything. He didn't know what he was looking for. Since I know that person, I'm very clear about when I'm saying he. Okay, in general, it would be he or she. But in this case, I know the person, and it was a he, believe me. And he just wanted to talk. This was somewhere 3 o'clock in the morning. And I don't really recall the specifics of what went on over there. But what I do recall is that he wanted to reach out and talk to someone. And then eventually, things started building up, and I started meeting more people. Now, instead of me dialing out and spending huge amount of money to dial into systems, other people were spending huge amount of money dialing into my system. I mean, basically their phone calls or whatever. In those days, there weren't even modems available in India, and those that were available were typically sold in pairs, because you would have one in your head office and one in your branch office. And more and more people started dialing in. Now, it clearly broke into several classes of people. Some people were not really interested in conversing with anyone, and we weren't really interested in dealing with them either. We were interested in the people who were willing to pick up conversations. And these people started participating in forums, started posting messages about anything, not necessarily technology, not necessarily technical stuff. Could be anything. It could be the weather. It could be relationships. It could be cooking recipes, whatever. We had lots of things going on over there. And while I watched this happening, now I had this unique perspective of sitting over there and actually seeing what was going on at all times. And what I was seeing was people from across, not just my neighborhood, not just from across my city, but people from across the country dialing in, spending time, spending hours trying to dial in. Remember, single telephone line? Dialing in and wanting to connect, not for the sake of downloading a game which you could have got from the latest PC Quest floppy or CD, the CDs actually came a little later. Or whatever. It's just that they wanted to, get in touch with other people. This was what I would call social networking. Now things went a little bigger than that. Over time, I also became a member of this thing called CompuServe, which was known as the biggest BBS in the universe, unless proven otherwise. No one ever proved otherwise. But the nice thing about CompuServe was there's just so many forums, and the things were being discussed, all manner of topics. It became fairly cheap also to do it from India, so I was able to get through to CompuServe, which ran in the US. And this was literally how what I would call my real education began. Not just my education in terms of technology, not my education in terms of stuff that I would use in my business or I would do in software or whatever. This is where my education in terms of relationships and dealing with people began. Because otherwise, you tend to be in this little pond and be subjected to the same set of people most of the time. And you don't really learn anything much over there. But when you start dealing with different cultures, with different people, you begin to learn something that you don't normally have access to. You don't even realize. I mean, the first few times I went in there, I didn't even realize that I was being subject to something that's completely different from what I was used to. And for me to say that, as it's fairly big, considering my half heritage. I'm half German and half Indian, and I have been brought up with both these cultures, and yet I was beginning to learn cultures of other people. Now, while I was on CompuServe, I remember this one particular conversation that happened over there, where you remember the plague thing that happened in Surat, and people immediately associated plague with bad, and Surat with India, and people are dying on the streets of India. And I was in those forums, and I pointed out, guys, give me a break. I live in India. And when I look out of my window, I don't see people falling dead on the streets. Okay, so first of all, this is a very small thing. Okay, it's confined to a particular area, and it's easily treatable. Now, this is where reality met pure ignorance. Now, it's the other side. Other people needed to learn. They needed to learn about different cultures, and they needed to learn that there are other sides to life. In this particular case, people stood up and challenged me. What do you know? You're probably a paid government agent over here trying to spread the word so that India doesn't get a bad name. I said, nothing of that sort. I'm one guy who's sitting in Bangalore. I look out of my window and there's no one dying. That's all I'm reporting. And this went on for a while, and unfortunately and very crazily, a lot of Indians were attacking me in that forum as well, Indians living abroad, and saying, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, great, fine, so whatever. Then suddenly this guy named Paul, somebody, I don't remember his exact name, comes on and says, why don't you listen to him? What he's saying is right. And one person very sarcastically turns around and asks him, so who do you think you are? The chief of the World Health Organization to be able to say that? And the guy replies, I actually am. And he was. He was the chief of the World Health Organization operations in India. And he very clearly said, whatever is said over here is basically what Atul said is exactly the same thing. It's very easy to treat. It's confined to a small area. It doesn't affect the rest of the country. Why are you bashing India so much? The nicest thing that came out of this was about 6 weeks later, I get a call from an old couple who had planned a trip to India for years. And when they called me from Bombay, just to say that they're here, we're here, the old lady was very excited. We're here, and whatever. I realized that if I wouldn't have stepped in at that moment and made my voice heard, and if other people wouldn't have done the same thing, we would have never, these people would have never come to India, and they wouldn't have been able to fulfill their life's ambition. They would have cancelled their trip, which is what they were about to do. This was an example of what was happening on the outside world, and how the online world was worked in those days. Now we are talking about the late 80s, the early 90s, when all this was going on. Then something else happened. Okay, so basically along came this thing called the internet. It came to, the internet had been around for a long time, but what we call the internet, reality, what we are talking about here is in 1993, the World Wide Web came along. And that became, the big thing that, anyone could get on and anyone could use it. They didn't need any special training and whatsoever. And they could get onto the internet. And I don't know whether you've heard that joke, join the army, go to exotic places, meet exotic people, and kill them. This is literally what happened to online communication. Now, I'm talking as literally, without patting myself on the back, I'm talking about someone who has actually lived through the dark ages, or what I would call the golden ages of communication. Because what I saw happening at that time is where a forum, a means of communication that I was so used to, okay, and that I thoroughly enjoyed and other people enjoyed, slowly going in a direction I was extremely uncomfortable with. There, before I tell you what that thing was, there was the other concept of mailing lists, which were also, they were basically a replacement for the CompuServe forums that I was using earlier, or the BBS forums. My own BBS basically shut down in 1999. But because basically the internet replaced all such communication systems. But there were also mailing lists, which continued, actually still continue till today, but I see them dying. There is no real communication going on anymore. So what happened? What happened to all these marvelous ways of communicating between people anywhere in the world, everywhere in the world, and at any time? Why were people not communicating anymore? This is 2010. Okay? And what we have as a replacement for all these glorious years of communication and means of communication that we had before, in the years before, is this. This is what has replaced the BBSs, has replaced the mailing lists, has replaced virtually every forum that existed earlier. People just don't anymore communicate in the way we used to back in those days. So why is this bad? I'm not saying it's really bad. I'm just saying that this is a world which is under attack. We've got the Facebooks, the Orkuts, the buzzers, and they're the high fives, and I mean, there's so many different social media, social networks that you can think of today. You know what's missing in all these places? And I've been on all of them. What is missing in all these places?
Communication.
No, even better, even more low level.
Communication with the same people that you know.
No, what's missing is the conversations. People talking to each other, having meaningful conversations, discussing something. It's gone. Just think about it. The last time you were on Facebook, what did you do? You went and looked at somebody's pictures? Great. Oh, how cute that baby is. Oh, look at that beautiful puppy. Sure. Oh, somebody posts something. Hey, I'm not feeling too good today. Oh, but what's wrong with you? Oh, I don't know, I got a headache. Oh, I'm just sick of life. Oh, get well soon. Done. That's the end of it. That's what conversations are boiling down to. I know you don't. I know you don't agree. That's exactly the point that I'm trying to make. There are people who are carrying on conversations. You may be one such person. I am one such person. But we have become people who are looked at and said, why are you doing this? What are you doing? I'll give you an example. I've got one right here. The issue that we are facing right now is the marketeers. The marketeers want to compartmentalize us, categorize us, put us in easily recognizable slots, and then go and sell us something. If you look at the structure of most modern, and I'm saying most, I'm not saying all, most modern social networks, this is what happens to you. Okay, you are basically, if somebody wants to know who are the people which fit in a particular category, it's easy to find out on Facebook. It's easy to find out on Orkut because they are structured that way. Buzz is, Google Buzz is something that's just come lately and it's evolving. Hopefully it will evolve into a proper direction. But in the end, what it comes down to is marketeers. Today, the big thing about, if you want to become a successful marketeer, you must understand the social network and how to use that. I'm getting to my point. Hang on. The other one is the politicians.
But what about stuff like couchsurfing and other such?
I said not all of them. Politicians is another issue. Now, let me clarify over here. In this context, Shashi Tharoor is not a politician. In this context that I'm speaking about, Shashi Tharoor is not a politician. Before somebody says, do you think it's bad that Shashi Tharoor is on, on various social networks, on Twitter or whatever? No. And I do not consider him a politician on this. I'm considering him as someone who's doing his job, and one of the things that he's doing is he's reporting on his activities. Which, as Osama earlier mentioned, why don't people report on what they're doing? This is one of the things. Okay, but unfortunately, what I'm talking about over here is not those people. These are the people who look at, hey, there are a huge number of eyeballs over here. There's a vote bank over here. Whatever. I mean, yesterday there was a discussion going on Twitter, and somebody asked me, do you want us to vote for you? Because I mentioned something in support of, women equality or whatever. And somebody asked me, jokingly, but do you want us to vote for you? It immediately comes to that there seems to be, is there something that you're trying to gain from this? Is there something that you're trying to, by saying this, you may or may not mean it, but are you saying it because you're trying to get some gain from it? But this is the immediate perception. Now we're sitting in a situation where I said there are exceptions, and you and I are two of those exceptions, probably, when I don't know what your background is, but this, unfortunately, is the biggest issue. Do you fall in this class? I'm certain you do not. And I don't think that most of the people I deal with on an everyday basis online fall in this class.
Again, I think you're making a huge generalization.
I am not making a generalization. I'm dealing with people who write the examination papers like this. And I correct them.
Perhaps a lot of people also don't write like that.
Unfortunately, they're becoming fewer and fewer and fewer.
Look at comment threads on Facebook. It's very, very different. Sometimes you have more stimulating conversations on the web.
I agree. How many are they easy to find? Can I find them easily? Let me give you an example over
Perhaps
here.
you're not dealing with the right people.
But Atul, the thing is, if you find them easily, then again the thing is, what we talked about is an ideal situation. The masses are the ideal situation. There will always be.
I actually come from a situation where they were easy to find. And I can't find them anymore. Or I have to spend a lot of time. My argument is this. While I do accept there's a need for social networking sites, they are not what you would call online communities. Because what you are talking about often is silos of people, with silos of discussions that are happening which are largely not seen by the rest of the world. No one else can benefit from them. There is an exception though, and I want to point out, you will have noticed that I didn't do this earlier, okay? That exception is Twitter. This is what actually triggered me off. When somebody asked me, why do you interact on Twitter the way you do? Others don't. You're doing it wrong. I was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. And apparently what I was doing wrong is, I'm having conversations on Twitter. I like talking to people. I like replying to people. Somebody says something, I like to respond to that. Apparently not done. Then, the next thing comes along when, oh, you've got small number of followers. I don't have a huge number of followers on Twitter, so good. But I have seen other people who get approached and said, we would like to push this particular thing into your audience. Now, does that person who has got these number of followers become an object of a marketing strategy? Should he or she now begin to change the way she operates to cater to that strategy? Or should he or she continue doing what she is doing, which is having conversations? Okay, so conversations is really the core of any community. When people interact together and the community starts growing larger and larger and larger because of that. It could be a community that's based around a common point of interest, or some topic which is becoming more and more interesting, or something that's growing, or it could be something technical, or it could be something completely esoteric, like Jamie just mentioned, food issues. Okay, you can build an entire community around that. But take Jamie's case. Let's say that Jamie now successfully builds up a community of people who think like him and think that children should be educated properly about food. And then some large soft drink company approaches Jamie and says, you've got this huge number of people who are interested in food. Help us reach them. And this is what happens immediately. Now, I'm not saying that people like Jamie will give in, but others do. And I've seen it. And you have seen it too. Now, when that happens, okay, you begin to trust people less and less. How do you know what that person is saying? How do you know whether he is saying it because he's convinced about it, or is he saying it because there is some profit for someone somewhere? Everyone has become suspicious. We need to understand that for a community to grow, it's not just about providing a place like Facebook and then in the comments you can continue doing. Those things don't grow into anything bigger. They might grow into hundreds of comments. But unless somebody comes and tells me there's this fascinating discussion going on over here, I have no way of finding it. The way people are becoming more and more paranoid about privacy is now seeing to it that even my trusty old way of finding such conversations, which used to be the search engine, Google or whatever, now is useless because Google cannot index most of those conversations anymore. People don't want them. This closed group has started. And when that happens, the conversations slowly start dying. Because there is no fresh blood coming in, no new viewpoints coming in. Now, when I think back 20 years, and remember the conversations that I used to see, I mean, there was this fabulous example I'd love to give. I saw two people discussing the pros and cons of a particular way of designing an airplane. That discussion went on for months. Other people, because everything was public and open, other people saw that and started pitching in. People started joining the BBS because this conversation was going on over there. It became huge. A year and a half later, just for kicks, I decided to have a party, basically a get together, and anyone who could come from the membership of the BBS, why don't you come and attend this meeting? Seemed like a good idea, so a lot of people also showed up. What was the most fascinating thing is, when the original two people who had started this discussion met face to face, one was a 70-year-old retired test pilot. The other one was a 14-year-old boy. And neither of them knew about what the other person was. No perceptions. Hey, that old codger can't possibly know anything about what it's like today. Or that young kid has no clue of it. No preconceived notions. They were going simply by what the other person was saying, evaluating his words, and then reacting to that. And the conversations grew around that. That was fascinating because I had not even thought about that. And I don't see this kind of thing anymore. Too much today is, too many conversations today are built around, who the person is, what that person's background is, and does he know or doesn't he know? Why don't you evaluate what he has to say on the basis of his words, rather than who he is or what he is? In this particular case, I saw the stunned look on the retired test pilot's face when he realized that his conversation partner was this young little boy. And he said, nothing he ever said sounded nonsensical to me. Nothing he ever did, or nothing he ever commented on. And he sometimes said, oh, I'm wrong, I learned something from this. And that made it a pleasure to discuss things with him. And this went on for a year and a half before they finally met face to face. Similarly, there was another person whom I was interacting with on the BBS and various other electronic forums. We discussed a lot of things. We had a lot of things in common, and we shared a lot of things. And the point that we started sharing information about our families, and newly married, a kid on the way, or whatever, all those joys and stuff. And then one day, that person walked into my office and said, hi, my name is Kishore Bhargav. And I was sitting actually at the receptionist's desk at that moment, and I turned around, and this was the person I've been conversing with for more than a year. Yeah, it's the same Kishore Bhargav who's sitting in front over here. This happened 20 years ago, and he is still today one of my closest friends. But when I compare that to the kind of relationships I sometimes build with friends on Facebook, I'm sorry, it's not the same quality anymore. I miss the conversations. This is what I want to say, but how does this impact? How is this an idea that will change anything in the future? Tell me. Same question Jamie asked. How many of you are parents? How many of you want your kids to learn the kind of values of this superficial, kind of this thing that they call conversational interaction? I don't think anyone really would want that. You would want your child to have meaningful conversations, but somehow along the way we have lost the way of doing that. I have no clue on how to fix this problem, which is why I'm talking about it now. I have no clue. I'm hoping that someone over here will think of something, maybe come up with a mobile app which will make it possible for children to interact normally in proper English, Hindi, Kannada, Marathi, whatever, rather than, you know, in the AOL-ish kind of way of speaking. Who will present ideas and argue against the point instead of arguing against the person. The art of debating is completely being lost. But I know, yes, I'm not generalizing that everyone is doing it. But I'm seeing a lot of them doing it. And those lot of people who are being affected, a lot of kids who are being affected by this being their only way of communication. This is how they go out. People come home from school, kids come home from school, sit in front of their PC, and for the next 5 hours, they'll be sitting there and chatting on Facebook. But there are no real conversations. And then they're bombarded by ads, they're bombarded by marketeers who don't really know how old that person is or whether this is appropriate or whatever. And then, you know, my daughter gets a call one day saying that, oh yeah, you're on Facebook and we saw that you're interested in such and such. Would you be interested in such and such a thing? That, obviously my daughter hides her age because I tell her to be careful. I tell her, you know, there are things which are not quite right out there as well. There are people who prey on you. So much of the information could otherwise be used, apart from the fact what her name is and, you know, what that she is male or female, is actually hidden. But this marketeer somehow manages to, you know, create the links, figures out, you know, how to reach her, and then reaches out to her and tries to sell her something. And she comes to me and says, look, Papa, this guy is trying to sell me something that was highly inappropriate for her. That is what I'm worried about. That is what I want to see changing. These conversations, this used to be a trademark, this used to be the name of my column, which I use today as talking about conversations that happen online. Nothing further than that. We need to go back to an age where people would trust the group of people around them, chat with them, interact with them. When instead of, when it's somebody's birthday, you go online and say, oh, happy birthday, XYZ, and that's it. And that's the extent of your greetings. When you log into Facebook, it says, it's your friend's birthday today, greet them. So you go over there and you click on greet, and you would like to buy them a virtual present. You spend 99 cents and buy them a virtual present. And this is the social interaction. They don't meet anymore. Even if they're in the same city, in the same street, for God's sakes. They don't do it anymore. This is their level of socialization. And this is the thing that I object to. We need to go back to a more simpler time. Teach people, teach our kids that this is the online world. It's not going to go away. It's always going to be there. But you need to use it in a manner in which it is useful to you in your future life. What you're learning right now is not useful. Because you don't know how to interact with people in real life. You see, it's somebody's birthday. You don't pick up the phone. Tell me, how many people here do this? How many people have in recent times, instead of picking up the phone and calling your friend and saying, hey, it's your birthday, happy birthday, I wanted to wish you, sent an SMS? Or sent a message on Twitter? Or gone and clicked the button on Facebook which automatically wishes the person? Think one more generation later. Is this what we wanted to go to? Is this what we want these online communities to be? And do we want eventually our communities to be? I certainly wouldn't want that. I think that's too high a price to pay. We have to go back to a time when a simple hello remains meaningful, and where it evokes a response that can lead to meaningful conversations. How we go there, I have no clue. I'm hoping that somebody here agrees or disagrees with me violently enough to do something about this. And lets us know, so that we can join in that effort.
Okay. And second type of community, social community, how do you in the
Sorry, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to take questions right now, but I believe there's an interactive session later, so let's take it then. Okay, thanks a lot.